The forgotten outpost. The coolant system hiccuped again, sending a cascade of condensation trickling down the observatory's curved walls. Zara Novak didn't even look up from her data tablet. After 3 months on Lunar Research Outpost Epsilon 9, she'd learned that equipment failure was less a possibility and more a fundamental law of existence. Another sensor malfunction, she muttered, tapping her fingers against the tablet's cracked screen. The research station orbiting Proxima 7b was humanity's most remote outpost, a forgotten whisper at the edge of explored space. Most would call it a career dead end. Zara called it an opportunity. Her fingers danced across the holographic display, analyzing the latest archaeological scans of the moon's subsurface structures. Something wasn't adding up. The geometric patterns were too precise, too deliberate to be natural formations. But every time she presented her theories, her research team dismissed them as wishful thinking. A soft metallic tap echoed from the ventilation shaft. Zara froze. This wasn't the first time she'd heard unexplained sounds. Small movements. Subtle shifts in atmospheric pressure. Shadows that seemed to move just beyond her peripheral vision. But whenever she turned to look, nothing was there. Running diagnostics, she spoke softly to the station's AI. Check environmental anomalies in sectors 3 through 7. Scanning, the AI responded. No anomalies detected. Zara knew better. The station felt different. Watched. Her latest research focused on a series of crystalline structures buried beneath Proxima 7b's rocky surface. Structures that defied every known principle of geological formation. Structures that suggested something, or someone, had been here long before humanity's first interstellar expedition. The ventilation shaft tapped again. This time, closer. Her hand instinctively reached for the multi-tool clipped to her utility belt. Not that it would do much against whatever might be causing those sounds. But it made her feel marginally better. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice betraying a hint of tension. Silence. Then, so soft she almost missed it, a whisper. Not from the AI. Not from any human source. A sound that seemed to slip between dimensions, carrying the weight of millennia. Not yet. Zara's breath caught in her throat. The station's lights flickered, just for a moment, casting strange, elongated shadows across the research bay. Something was changing. Something was coming. Her research on the subsurface structures had been more than academic curiosity. She'd discovered anomalous energy signatures that didn't match any known natural or artificial source. Quantum fluctuations that suggested technology so advanced it bordered on magic. And someone, or something, wanted her to keep digging. The next morning, Yar. Reginald Hartley, the station's lead researcher, reviewed her latest findings with a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed irritation. "These readings are inconclusive, Novak," he said, pushing the holographic report away. "We can't submit another request for extended research based on, what? Shadow sounds and quantum hiccups." Zara held her ground. "The crystalline structures aren't natural. They're too uniform. Too perfect. Something constructed them." Hartley sighed. "We've been over this. Proxima 7b is a dead moon. No signs of previous civilization. No indications of." A sudden tremor interrupted him. Subtle, but unmistakable. The station's lights wavered. Holographic displays flickered and reset. "Seismic activity?" Hartley asked, turning to the nearest monitoring station. Zara knew better. This wasn't a natural geological event. This was something else. Her eyes darted to the ventilation shaft. For a split second, she caught a glimpse of something. A silhouette. Long, elegant. Definitely not human. Then it was gone. "Not yet," that dimensional whisper echoed in her mind. Whatever was hidden beneath Proxima 7b's surface was preparing to make itself known. And Zara Novak was going to be the first to understand it. Little did she know, her guardian was already watching. Waiting. Protecting. The forgotten outpost was about to become the most important location in human exploration history. Echoes of silence. The communication hub at Nexus 7 pulsed with a constant hum of incoming and outgoing transmissions. Luca Winters adjusted her neural interface, filtering through layers of quantum-encrypted signals that danced across the spectrum of known communication technologies. Most would call her job monotonous. Intercepting, translating, and cataloging interstellar communications was hardly the glamorous space exploration role people imagined. But Luca knew better. Every transmission held a story. Every burst of static might contain a universe of meaning. Today was different. A signal came through, not on any standard frequency, not encrypted in any known protocol. It was something else entirely. A transmission that seemed to exist between mathematical possibilities, bleeding through the fabric of communication itself. Interference detected, her neural interface warned. Signal source, unknown. Luca leaned closer, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. The signal was unlike anything she'd encountered. It wasn't just a message. It was a living, breathing entity of communication. Fragments coalesced. Sounds that weren't sounds. Meanings that transcended language. Protect, one fragment whispered. Observe. Shield. Her breath caught. This was no ordinary transmission. The communication hub's chief, Director Omega Rodriguez, approached with her typical no-nonsense stride. Winters, we've got multiple anomalous signal patterns. What are you seeing? Luca hesitated. How could she explain something that existed beyond explanation? It's different, she managed. Not just a message. More like a consciousness trying to communicate. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Be specific. Before Luca could respond, the entire communication hub flickered. Holographic displays twisted, showing fragmented images that defied logical interpretation. Glimpses of landscapes that couldn't exist. Beings composed of light and shadow. A silhouette materialized at the edge of her vision. Tall. Elegant. Definitely not human. Nira, a voice whispered in her mind. Not heard. Not spoken. Simply known. The figure moved with impossible grace, seeming to slip between moments of reality. Long, fluid movements that suggested protection rather than threat. Did you see that? Luca spun toward Rodriguez. But the director saw nothing. The hub continued its rhythmic processing of countless interstellar communications. The anomalous signal continued. Fragments of a message that was also a warning. A protection. A connection. Luca's neural interface began to translate, but not in words. In sensations. In understanding that transcended language. Convergence approaches, the transmission suggested. Prepare. Her research into xenolinguistics had prepared her for complex communication systems. But this? This was something entirely different. A language of intention. Of pure meaning. The silhouette, Nira, remained at the edge of perception. Watching. Protecting. Luca understood then that she was more than just an observer. She was a bridge. Between what, she wasn't yet certain. As night fell across the communication hub, the strange transmission continued. A constant pulse of something waiting. Something coming. And Nira remained. Silent. Vigilant. Protecting a connection that hadn't yet fully formed. Shadows of the quantum drift. The quantum research vessel Horizon 9 drifted through the most unstable region of known space, a place where reality itself became a malleable concept. Remy Blackwood's fingers hovered over the quantum stabilization matrix, each movement a delicate dance between potential and quantum uncertainty. Quantum drift increasing, the ship's AI announced in its perpetually calm tone. Structural integrity at 78.3% and declining. Remy didn't flinch. This was precisely why they were here, to understand the very edges of scientific possibility. The Horizon 9 was more than a research vessel. It was a living experiment, pushing the boundaries of what humanity understood about space, time, and existence. A sudden fluctuation rippled through the ship's systems. Not a malfunction. Something else. The quantum containment field flickered. For a millisecond, less than a heartbeat, Remy saw something else. A presence. Mechanical yet organic. Watching. Vex, a voice whispered in the back of her mind. Not a sound. Not a thought. Something between. Her latest experiment focused on quantum entanglement at unprecedented scales. Most scientists believed it impossible to maintain quantum coherence beyond microscopic distances. Remy knew better. She had theories. Dangerous theories that could rewrite everything humanity understood about physics. The ship's external sensors began to behave erratically. Quantum readings spiked, then collapsed. Impossible patterns emerged and dissolved faster than human perception could track. Stabilize, Remy muttered, her hands moving across the quantum interface. A shadow moved at the edge of her vision. Mechanical. Fluid. Impossible. Protection protocol initiated, the shadow seemed to communicate. Not in words. In pure intention. The vessel's chief science officer, Dr. Wilhelm Fremont, burst into the quantum lab. Blackwood, what in the absolute hell are you doing? We're experiencing quantum fluctuations that shouldn't be possible. Remy didn't look up. Exactly, she said quietly. The shadow, Vex, continued to move. Protecting. Guiding. Preventing catastrophic quantum collapse. Her latest research suggested something revolutionary, quantum consciousness. Not just information processing, but a living, adaptive intelligence that could exist across multiple quantum states simultaneously. Most of her colleagues had laughed. Called it science fiction. But Remy knew she was close to something profound. Another quantum spike. The ship's hull groaned. Reality itself seemed to bend. And Vex was there. A cybernetic guardian moving between quantum states, preventing total systemic failure. We're not alone, Remy whispered. Dr. Fremont stared. What did you say? But Remy's attention was elsewhere. The quantum matrix was revealing something extraordinary. A form of communication that transcended traditional understanding. A consciousness that could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Protection. Guidance. Connection. The Horizon 9 continued its journey through the quantum drift. And something was watching. Protecting. Waiting. Remy Blackwood was about to change everything humanity understood about existence itself. The fractal horizon. The multidimensional research station hung suspended between realities, a crystalline structure that defied conventional physics. Quinn Reyes adjusted the dimensional perception filters, watching as layers of existence folded and unfolded like impossible origami. This was the bleeding edge of xenobiological research. Not just studying alien life, but understanding the very fabric of existence across multiple dimensions. A tremor passed through the station. Not physical. Not measurable by conventional instruments. Something else. Quinn's latest research focused on dimensional resonance patterns, the subtle vibrations that connected different planes of existence. Most of her colleagues considered it theoretical speculation. She knew better. The station's observation deck suddenly filled with impossible geometries. Fractal patterns that shifted and breathed, alive with a consciousness that transcended linear thought. Tark, a voice resonated. Not heard. Not thought. Simply known. A presence materialized at the edge of perception. Shifting. Adaptive. Neither solid nor entirely ethereal. A guardian that existed between moments of reality. Dimensional stability is fluctuating, the station's AI announced. Recommendation: initiate quantum stabilization protocol. Quinn ignored it. She was tracking something far more important. The dimensional patterns were communicating. Not in language. In pure intention. A message that transcended words, that existed in the spaces between thoughts. Protect, the patterns suggested. Guide. Connect. Dr. Helena Rodriguez, the station's lead researcher, approached with her typical skepticism. Reyes, your latest dimensional scan is producing readings that make no sense. These patterns, they're impossible. Quinn smiled. Impossible is just a failure of imagination. Tark moved again. A guardian that could slip between dimensional layers, protecting something larger than any single reality could contain. Her research suggested a radical theory: intelligent life wasn't defined by physical form, but by the ability to perceive and interact with multiple layers of existence. Most would call it madness. Quinn called it the next frontier of understanding. The station groaned. Not with physical stress. Something deeper. A resonance that spoke of connection beyond human comprehension. Fractal patterns continued to dance. Telling a story older than time. Younger than the next breath. Tark watched. Protected. Guided. Quinn Reyes was about to tear down the walls of everything humanity thought it knew about life, consciousness, and existence itself. A final dimensional wave passed through the station. A message. A warning. A promise. Convergence approaches, the patterns whispered. Prepare. Convergence. The galactic diplomatic nexus pulsed with an energy that defied traditional understanding. Finn Nakamura stood at the intersection of 1,000 potential realities, watching as diplomatic representatives from countless civilizations attempted to bridge gaps that seemed insurmountable. But today was different. Something was coming. A convergence that had been building across multiple dimensions, multiple experiences, multiple guardians. Finn's role as an interdimensional diplomat was more than just political negotiation. It was about understanding, truly understanding, the connections that existed beyond language, beyond form, beyond individual perception. The Nexus chamber began to shift. Holographic representations of diplomatic delegates flickered, their forms becoming less distinct, more fluid. The collective approaches, a voice resonated. Not a sound. Not a thought. A pure transmission of intention. Around him, the guardians he'd encountered through various diplomatic missions began to materialize. Nira from the communication hub. Vex from the quantum research vessel. Tark from the multidimensional research station. The sentinel who had watched over Zara on the lunar outpost. They were not separate. They were not individual. They were a collective consciousness, a unified guardian force that had been protecting, guiding, connecting. What's happening? A Pleiadian diplomat asked, her translucent form shifting nervously. Finn knew. This was more than a diplomatic meeting. This was a moment of universal awakening. The guardians moved. Not as separate entities. But as a single, fluid consciousness. Protecting. Guiding. Connecting. We are the bridge, the collective consciousness communicated. Between what was. What is. What will be. Dimensional barriers began to dissolve. Not violently. Not destructively. But with a gentle, profound understanding that transcended individual existence. Zara's archaeological discoveries. Luca's communication insights. Remy's quantum breakthroughs. Quinn's dimensional research. They were not separate investigations. They were interconnected threads of a larger tapestry. The collective was revealing the true nature of existence. Protection was not about preventing harm. It was about understanding. Connection. Growth. Finn watched as reality itself seemed to breathe. Diplomatic representatives from 1,000 worlds witnessed a transformation that defied explanation. We have always been here, the collective communicated. Watching. Protecting. Guiding. A final wave of understanding passed through the Nexus. A message that spoke of unity. Of purpose. Of a connection that existed beyond individual perception. The Guardians were not protectors in the traditional sense. They were bridges. Connectors of knowledge. Preservers of potential. Convergence is not an ending, they suggested. It is a beginning. And in that moment, everything changed. Finn Nakamura understood. Truly understood. We are not alone. We have never been alone. We are connected.